Black Creativity 2026 is now open at the Museum of Science and Industry. The exhibit features the nation's longest running exhibition of Black art, plus interactive family experiences, STEAM career showcases, that's science, tech, engineering, art, and mathematics, youth flight school camps, and signature events throughout the season. From art and innovation to education and community celebration, Black Creativity uplifts the voices, stories, and contributions of Black artists across generations. Grab your tickets now at griffinmsi.org. Steppenwolf Theater presents The Dance of Death, Conor McPherson's twisted modern take on Austin Strindberg's masterclass in marital warfare. In its 4-star review, the Chicago Sun-Times called it Steppenwolf acting at its very best, and as deliriously entertaining as it is astonishingly profound. Featuring 3 generations of Steppenwolf ensemble members and directed by ensemble member Yasin Piankov. The Dance of Death is now playing through March 22nd. Tickets at steppenwolf.org.
Nobody knows.
Today on CityCast Chicago, gospel music has deep roots, from African musical traditions to Southern Negro spirituals to the hymns that traveled north during the Great Migration and found home in Black churches on the south side of Chicago. As we celebrate Chicago's Black history all week long, we're digging in the crates and revisiting a conversation from back in 2022 where we learned why Chicago is considered the birthplace of modern gospel. It's Wednesday, February 25th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. When I tell people I grew up in the Catholic Church, they assume I grew up in a very kind of dry, very traditional, very Ave Maria. Then I tell them, no. I grew up in a Black Catholic church on the South Side. Our musical choir director was named Mr. Carter, God rest his soul. And that man loved gospel music with everything in him. So coming up, it was one of the earliest forms of music that I can remember, not only in my household, but as I went to school, as I started to sing in the choir alongside my siblings. And so learning more about the roots and the history of gospel music, particularly its roots here in Chicago, I'm so grateful for this opportunity. So Stacey, welcome to CityCast Chicago.
Thank you. I love that story. And I heard that a lot over the course of making this. I would say that is not how I came up to.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, my experience with the Black church is entirely different. I was raised as Unitarian, and Unitarians are known to have the worst church music and the worst singing. So I didn't grow up with that rich beauty and culture. It was not part of my experience. But when I hear the music, I still feel it very much in my soul. And I think that's
right.
Because it's embedded.
It gets into our DNA.
It is our DNA.
Even as I've grown older and maybe, moved away from the church a little bit, the music still grabs me. I mean, let's just be real. It's fire. And so paint the scene for me. The story of gospel music in Chicago is like so many other things related to Black folks, the story of Great Migration. Stacey, how does gospel music start to make its way to Chicago?
It is a great migration story. It arrives here from the South when so many other African Americans, Blacks, were arriving from the South to escape Jim Crow and this kind of poverty and history of slavery. But as they arrive, even in Chicago, where there is an established community waiting for them, there is a cultural clash. And that clash, it is really expressed in the African American church. It becomes, they describe it as a worship war. There was also the war of musics in the Black church in the same way.
When migrants start coming up here, there's about 5 or 6 established churches. And this story really starts with Pilgrim Baptist Church. Why is that such an integral landmark in gospel music?
Pilgrim was one of 5 what they used to call silk stocking churches. And that's because the women wore stockings, and the kind of music and the I would say the prayer it was very reserved. African Americans in Chicago had established their own community, and one of the ways that they had done this was really by assimilating white culture, right? That was really true in the church. And the migrants arrived with a different kind of music. Their music was it was very expressive, and it still had this African culture and rhythmic beauty to it. And it also had the emotionalism, I would say, of going through Jim Crow and slavery, and that kind of experience was still very present in the music and in their religion. Pilgrim Baptist Church is where Thomas Dorsey arrived and became the choir director there. And so it has this cultural significance, as some would say, the birthplace of gospel music.
When Dorsey first got to Chicago, was his music styles welcomed in the church? How did the church react to not only the way Southern migrants dressed, but the way they chose to worship?
They called it devil's music. They told him to get that blues and jazz out of the church. He was kicked out. He has a saying that he said he was kicked out of more churches than he was allowed in. You know, that really shows what his experience was.
One moment from the Chicago Stories, The Birth of Gospel, that I really loved is they were talking about preachers saying, you know, this music sounds like Saturday night music. And folks would be like, how you know what Saturday night music sound like? But before Dorsey is able to get churches to buy in, what did he do to get by in Chicago? How did he persist while he was trying to proliferate this new sound?
I love the story of Thomas Dorsey because he embodies that idea of that struggle between Saturday night and Sunday morning. But he was a blues musician. And I think he saw himself as being a star. You know, not necessarily in the church. I think he transitioned to the church. And he was playing with Ma Rainey and the Wildcats. And he was working for recording studios that were recording many of the blues and jazz artists of the day. And he was their house arranger. So, you know, he had his day job and his night job.
Being split between those worlds really started to take a toll on him. He considered going back to Georgia. He was losing weight. He felt depressed at times. When did he realize that he had to just give his all to bring these two worlds together?
He really said that he was sort of appointed by God. God's the one who told him to bring this music into the church. And that's probably why he felt so strongly about it. There were times when he gave up playing in the blues clubs altogether, but, you know, he's got to eat. So he would go back there. And I'm not sure that he ever was able to take both of his feet out of the nighttime blues circuit until he really started at Pilgrim Church. And it's unfortunate by that time he had already suffered a lot of tragedy in his life before he had that realization.
At one point during his struggles, he ends up dropping a major hit called Tight Like That.
Listen there, folks, want to sing a little song. Don't get mad, we don't mean no harm. You know it's tight like that. Beat it up on board, tight like that.
Which is one of those Saturday night songs that got everybody rocking, you know, that had people moving. You know, was that success? Did that, you know, kind of push him more into his struggle? Because now he's finding the ability to feed his family, but it still isn't necessarily matching that calling that you speak of.
I think so.
I went to see my gal over across the hall. Find another mule kicking in my stall. You know it's tight like that.
I think so. I think that, you know, that life touring in a band, you know, with Ma Rainey, which that's a really wild life. So if that's not the life that's making you happy, but you're in it, I think he gained that success, but it wasn't the fulfillment that he wanted, right?
Yeah. And then he writes Savior.
I was standing by the bedside of a neighbor.
After losing someone, he sits down, he writes this song, but it's a mixture. It's a true mixture. He calls it gospel blues. Can you tell me a little bit about that song? People in the doc, spoke about it as if it was a book in the Bible.
If You See My Savior was a song that he wrote about a friend that had passed away. And it was really his first gospel hit. And people do talk about that because we all know this song. We learned it in church.
I was on my way. You may meet some old friend who may ask you for me. Tell them I am coming home.
But I think even after he's written that song, he still is still kind of has one foot in both the secular and the non-secular. But really, he loses his wife and his child, and it's really a tragic moment. And he writes the song Precious Lord. And that's a song that you hear in church today, like you hear it at every funeral. It still resonates today because it's in some ways it's everybody's story of loss, right? But it is it has all those blues elements in it, the cadence and the lament and the emotionalism of a blues song.
Lord, I want through the storm.
And I think that that's what really showed him, I would guess, that he could have both things, right? And I have to think at that moment in time that he realized something, which is the same thing that Africans brought over when they made that transatlantic crossing, was that there was no division between the secular and the non-secular life. It's all the same. Our Saturday night and our Sunday morning, it's all the same experience. And it's all anointed.
And the day is on.
If you're looking for a reason to get out of town for a weekend or a week, maybe check out South by Southwest. That's where some of the world's most curious and inspired and eclectic minds gather to shape what's next. It's the ultimate gathering for the global creative community where thought leaders, filmmakers, musicians, and other professionals share the same space and build together. Innovation, film and TV, music, and culture collide when the 2026 South by Southwest conferences and festivals land in Austin, Texas, March 12th through the 18th. For one electric week, the city becomes a playground for boundary-pushing ideas, world premieres, and live performances that turn into beneficial experiences. Gain real access to new ideas, people, and opportunities that don't just happen anywhere else. They happen at South by Southwest, driven by Rivian. It's an experience built on connection and the thrill of seeing the future first. Plus, you can unlock a 10% discount on your innovation badge when you use code CityCast10 at sxsw.com/Chicago. Discount on badge price only, not combinable. Terms apply. So start planning your adventure today. Can you talk a little bit about the midnight broadcast?
Oh yeah, doesn't that sounds amazing? This is fun because
it sounds like a cool club, honestly.
Right. I think the whole vibe in Chicago during this time was very, very cool. And the midnight broadcast is churches would broadcast at night, but the midnight broadcast was one of the largest broadcasts going on in the South Side, and everybody would come to see it. So people would leave the nightclubs at midnight and go to the midnight broadcast to the church to see who was playing and what that show was going to be. And then they would leave their drinks on the table and then go back and finish after the midnight broadcast was over. So
Stacey, could you imagine yourself doing that today, leaving the club to go to 12 o'clock church to see who rocking the church out and then be like, all right, cool. I left my tequila on the table. I'm gonna go pick that up now. Like, could you see yourself doing that?
That would make church very, very appealing to me, actually. Don't you? I feel like it would be nice to have a return to that kind of lifestyle in a way. I think it would rejuvenate the church, and I feel like it would rejuvenate our community too.
You know, we spent so much time talking about Thomas Dorsey, aka the father of gospel music in Chicago and different places in the country. But if we're talking about the person who took gospel music global, then we talking about Mahalia Jackson. My grandmother lived across the street from Mahalia Jackson Elementary School, so it is a name I am quite familiar with. When does Thomas meet Mahalia Jackson, and what is it about her that takes this sound global?
Mahalia Jackson was 17 years old when Thomas Dorsey met her. And he had really taken this idea of the gospel choir and he was kind of unifying it behind this one sound. So he would have these singers that would go from church to church and they would bring his songs to other churches to be sung in other churches and sometimes to sell them because he's making some money, right? He's selling these songbooks of his
sheet
songs,
music.
right? They are entrepreneurs. So they are spreading the gospel, like literally, right? From church to church. And so he wanted these singers and Mahalia Jackson came and she had come from New Orleans, right? And she has got this voice and this true blues voice to combine with his music. And I think he saw that as a real connection.
Precious Lord, take my hand.
There are people who say that he did not always care for her voice because she was too natural. Like she would never sing the same song the same way twice, right? Because she was singing from her soul.
So she had her own music gumbo.
Right.
Couldn't tame it.
I am tired. I am weak.
But you hear that true, like, it's the expression of what's happening in your life. It's the expression of your soul coming out in your music, in her voice. And I think that as she comes up, there's perhaps a transition in Black life. That's exactly what we need at that time, right? And I think it's a time when, migrants have moved here. They're here in this new urban landscape, like in Chicago. They've learned how to live, but they're still very much living in a racist society, right? And our music has always been a music of protest. If you think about the Black spiritual and everything else, it's a way of surviving the life that we're living and knowing that there's something better. And I think Mahalia really expressed that in a very clear and emotional way.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's an accident that they say that, spirituals and Mahalia Jackson become kind of the soundtrack of the civil rights movement. I think it's the exact same root of Black music from the very beginning, that's what it's there for. It's to help us survive.
Yes, ma'am. If Dorsey and Mahalia Jackson ended up in Detroit together, or Kansas City, or New York, will gospel music be what it is today, or is Chicago play a particularly important role to that maturation of the sound?
Well, I'm going to say it could only happen in Chicago. I'm going to say it could only happen in Chicago. There were so many things that were happening in Chicago at that same time that were feeding that. I mean, we were recording race records in Chicago. So there were recording studios run by a Black man, really. At the same studios, they were also recording the very first gospel music because, why not? If you're going to record one, why not the other? So that's happening. All the storefront churches that took over in Chicago, there were churches and there were tent revivals all going along the west side. Maxwell Street was full of street preachers and people singing on the street corners. I just have to imagine that it was just this, just this hub.
In 2006, the Pilgrim Baptist Church experienced a fire, and to this day, there's still efforts to rebuild and honor it and to host the National Museum of Gospel Music. How important is it for that building to not only, be saved and be turned into a museum, but how's it important for there to be a gospel music museum in Chicago?
I think it's really important, and it saddens me a little bit that Chicago, that we aren't preserving our musical history in a way that I think it's a missed opportunity. It happens with blues, and I think we definitely should be about gospel music too. And I don't think we realize how important it is or how integral it is to the city of Chicago. But I think we should honor that history before it is lost. African American history is so interesting and so important, and we need to take those stories. We need to tell them ourselves. Otherwise, it's going to be twisted and it's going to be changed, and we're going to lose it entirely. It's going to get washed away.
Stacey Robinson is a writer and producer of The Birth of Gospel. Stacey, thank you so much for joining us on CityCast.
Thank you so much. This has really been a pleasure.
Before we get out of here, I got some good news. To conclude the DuSable Museum's 2026 Black History Month program, they're going all out with a closeout celebration this Saturday, 10 a.m. through 8 p.m. They're hosting several performances, musical productions, film screenings. They're going to have a community discussion with Dilla and a performance from the one and only Leo High School Choir. I'll drop a link for you in the show notes. As always, we appreciate you for listening and reading. If you've been here for a while, I hope the episodes this week are a nice refresher as we go into celebrating 5 years, a reminder of so much of the work we've done over these years and how much more we got ahead of us. And if you relatively new to the podcast and have joined in the last few weeks, months, even a couple of years, if you've never heard these episodes, I hope this inspires you to go back and listen to a few more. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow, keeping this thing rolling. We'll talk to you then. Peace.